Hey everyone, welcome back to today's Love Transformation class. Every year, one of my favorite guests to talk to is today's guest. We're going to have a bit of a juicy conversation. We've also had some relationships that kind of veered into that unhealthy sort of toxic space. And Darcy and I are going to unpack a little bit more about how to notice the red flags, why that happens, what really is at the core of toxic relations from a psychological perspective, and so much more. Welcome, Darcy.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. This is always one of my favorite summits ever to be a part of. And you just bring so many amazing coaches to this summit and so much value and great topics. And I love your vibe and your energy. So I'm so excited to be here.
Yay, thank you so much. And one of the reasons why I love our conversation so much is because not only do you have a really deep breadth of experience working with women, obviously your experience understanding the deeper psychological side of things as a therapist, but also your own lived experience. So when we talk about toxic relationships, what is it that makes you so passionate about helping women with this experience?
Honestly, like right off the top of my head, obviously comes my own experience and my navigating the process of trying to find a healthy partner for a long time and having my wounds really control that process, and having my own, growing up with a fair share of like neglect and abandonment really motivated me to just want to be loved so deeply that I didn't realize that because of that, I was attracting so many toxic people into my life that couldn't love me because of course they couldn't love themselves. So having to navigate that alone for so long was so hard. And so once I realized that I was struggling with that and I started getting help, and then I started learning how to help other people, I got really excited by the idea of like helping a lot of women heal around that and stop doing that, right? Because it creates more woundedness, and of course it's more painful, and it gets harder and it gets difficult over time. And then I would say my other reason why I'm so passionate is because it is very powerful being able to navigate the process of going from attracting so many toxic men to finally being able to attract healthy men and actually wanting to be with healthy men, right? Because a lot of times when we're attracting toxic men, there's a part of us that resonates and wants to be with toxic men on a certain level, right? And so there are healthy guys that we could go out with, but a lot of times we're not wanting to go out with those healthy guys. We're wanting to invest in and be with toxic men. And that's a kind of a sleeper dynamic that a lot of women aren't really aware of. They have no idea that they actually want that, right? So that's a little bit about why I get so excited about it.
And it's interesting, like I noticed that you've made the reference toxic men. And we've titled today's conversation Toxic Relationships.
Yes.
So I want to just make the distinction, because I think often we go one way or the other, right? We either sort of like blame ourselves and overly, I take on the responsibility of being a loser or a failure, and why can't I make relationships work? Or we swing the other way and completely blame the other person. It was him, that he was toxic, he was a narcissist. What are your thoughts about that, and how we sort of contribute and how much responsibility we should take for finding ourselves in relationships that are unhealthy?
Well, I think if you're trying to navigate healing these toxic relationships as an adult, you have to take pretty much full responsibility, right? Because the reality is, yeah, a lot of us were dealt a difficult or crappy hand in childhood, okay? Like, I don't know about you, but I'm in my 40s. And so when I was really young, there wasn't like conscious parenting, like parents weren't really taught how to show up and be the very best parents they could be. But in reality, most parents, not all, but most parents, at least to my knowledge, like they did try the best that they could, right? Except for like physically abusive parents and stuff like that. And you may have a difficult childhood, but the reality is if you're an adult and you're trying to attract a relationship, if you want to heal, you have to assume 100% responsibility for where you're at in your life today. Otherwise, it doesn't work, because being a victim does not allow you to empower yourself to genuinely be able to show up 100% in partnership, because partnership is sometimes difficult, right? Like, you know, there's a lot of women that I have worked with, a lot of women I've known over the years who expect that the day that a guy shows up to put a beautiful ring on her finger and marry her, that everything is just going to fall into place. And it's not true. Partnership allows us to be the best version of ourselves, which means that it pushes us to work on ourselves and to challenge us and to do all those things. And if you're not accepting 100% responsibility for who you are and for your life and where you're at this moment in time, then being in an empowered, healthy relationship with a masculine man, which is what a lot of women on these series are looking for, then you're not going to be able to sustain a partnership like that for the rest of your life.
So would I be right then in assuming that a toxic relationship isn't necessarily all about choosing toxic men or being attracted to toxic men or overlooking red flags, but that sometimes we can end up in a really unhealthy relationship with someone who may have otherwise been able to create a healthy partnership? Or is it really a case of missing some of those early warning signs, do you think?
Sometimes it can be a case of missing early warning signs. I think that a lot of times, you know, women who have been hurt, women who've had like abandonment and neglect in their childhood and stuff, I think that a lot of those women, you know, they didn't receive a lot of love, and yet they are actually structured internally to want to give a lot of love and really want to, you know, be a mom and be a partner and be all those things. And so they want to give all these guys the benefit of the doubt. So when a guy shows up and, you know, he creates a little drama in the beginning or kind of tests some boundaries or does some things that are red flags, she thinks, well, maybe he's just creating that because he really likes me. And maybe he's, you know, pushing against my boundaries, not because he's controlling, but because he genuinely wants to, you know, take all of my time and energy or whatever. She wants to give him the benefit of the doubt, right? I think also too, we have to acknowledge that when a human being has gone a very long time without love in their life, they start to reach a stage called deprivation, which is where they're basically like starving for love, right? Like if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s looking for a partner and you haven't had one in a long time, you know, chances are pretty good you aren't receiving the physical affection you need. You are not receiving all of the emotional and mental connection that you need. You know, you're in deprivation. And once that happens, women are much more likely to not see these signs and to let things go because they're deprived of that connection and they need it. So that's why I do feel like, you know, as love coaches, it's part of our job to help women learn how to meet those needs on their own so that they're not in a stage of deprivation. And that way they're able to pick healthy guys and not kind of just pick at what they get. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that I noticed, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts as well, is that if there's some aspect or some behavior of our parents that was kind of not ideal, we often tend to develop a bit of a tolerance to that. So for example, if mum and dad split up and dad was a bit inconsistent, right? And he only visited every now and then, you know, I've noticed that there ends up being like this tolerance for a partner being a bit inconsistent and making excuses for that and still feeling like, well, that's just love, what love is like. Or if dad was a bit sort of angry and raised his voice, and there's often a tolerance for a man who raises his voice where someone who wasn't accustomed to that would be an immediate red flag. Is that pattern something that you've noticed as well?
Well, I think to a certain extent, we accept the love that we think we deserve, and our kind of temperature or like thermometer set of what we think that we're worthy of a lot of times is established in childhood before a certain age. But I also think that subconsciously and psychologically speaking, we do try to heal our childhood wounds through our adult partnership. So I do think that if we have a wound around dad being inconsistent in his caregiving, a lot of times we'll attract a partner who's inconsistent in their caregiving. I don't like the word caregiving because they're not your caregiver, but who will be inconsistent in how they show up with you, because you're trying to recreate that dynamic so that you can heal it and you can have it go better this time and have it go differently, right? When in reality, you know, what would probably be healthier or better is to heal the wound inside yourself and how to learn to become somebody who's more securely attached, and then ultimately hopefully choose a partner that's more securely attached so the relationship can have like a better, more sustainable foundation on which to grow, right?
Why is it that we so often, if the very thing that we really should be looking for, if we know we have this pattern, and I'll use this same example of like being inconsistent, often when that guy shows up and he's super present and he's super available and he's super consistent and he's really interested, there's just no attraction, or there's just something about him that we don't want to lean into, and why it is that we don't find these safe, healthy men as attractive when we're still unhealed.
Well, one thing I would say for sure is that I don't think we talk enough about the addiction to intensity. So people who are really wounded around partnership are usually pretty addicted to intensity. So usually when you attract a guy who's emotionally stable and secure, he usually is not trying to trauma bond with you or get a hit or create intensity. He's usually trying to be what we call relational. Like he's trying to connect with you, he's trying to communicate with you, he's trying to get to know you, like he's trying to show up on a healthy level. And when somebody's trying to do that in the beginning, it doesn't feel the same as intensity does. You're not getting high, you're not getting these hits. And so women who have trauma in their past, it feels like it's not a connection. It feels like, he's boring, I'm not really feeling it, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, obviously we're not a match. Obviously I should move on. It's like, no, actually just hold on a second. Like, it's good to not have that kind of intensity in the beginning. Like I have said many times on social media, like relationships that start fast end fast, you know, it's like, it's intensity. It's very difficult for it to be sustainable, right? I know I've said sustainable like 20 times, but it's very hard for relationships that are based on intensity to last, right? Like relationships that last are usually relationships that they start slow and you actually get to know the person, you take your time, there's not a rush, and you have sex like at an appropriate time when you know that guy. But when you're addicted to intensity, when you're addicted to trauma bonds, like one book that I think is great for women to read is The Betrayal Bond by Patrick Carnes. It talks a lot about trauma bonding. It talks a lot about intensity. It talks a lot about love addiction, relationship addiction. But that's a big reason why we're bored with guys that are healthy and show up, because they're not trying to trauma bond with us. They're trying to create a connection in a relationship.
What are some of the patterns that you see? Is there sort of different categories or stereotypical ways in which we find ourselves potentially in like a toxic or unhealthy relationship dynamic?
Some of the patterns that I see for sure are lots of intensity in trauma bonding, relationships starting really, really fast, and there being like a lot of like, oh my God, I never felt this way ever, like within the first week, like the guy loves you like right away, lots of like sworn, you know, like I'm obsessed with you, you're it, like that kind of stuff. Lots of love bombing, right? A lot of like sex like right away before there's any kind of connection that's actually built. A lot of like anxiety, feeling triggered around that person, like really quickly, not knowing why, finding yourself like obsessing, patterns like only thinking about him, not taking care of yourself, not prioritizing yourself, that kind of stuff like you see in the beginning, you know, and those are some internal signs, just like some external ones to be aware, like, hey, if those things are going on, like when you meet a guy, you should feel centered around him. Like you should feel okay around him. Like you shouldn't feel all this like unexpressed anxiety that you don't know where it's coming from. Like I'm not saying that you're going to meet a guy, you're going to be like, oh my God, he feels like home, because that's not what I'm saying at all. But you should be able to go on dates with a guy and feel safe with him and feel like, okay, I can open up more, I can continue to get to know him, but it's supposed to be a slower process.
We spoke a little bit about narcissism last year, and I have some thoughts about how I feel, often it's an overused word.
Sure.
But I'd love to if you could share with the girls perhaps some tips about, or signs of some things that they could pick up in the early stages that someone may have narcissistic tendencies, or what are some other things we can look out for as far as the person that might indicate that they're unhealthy.
Yeah, so, that was a good conversation last year because, in this last year, I worked with so many women who are in partnership with sex addicts. And, this narcissist like trend is, I'm not saying that it's not valid for a lot of people, because it's very, very valid. But these other things like sex addiction, like men with borderline personality disorder, like guys who have addiction or alcoholism, like a lot of these other things that are very treatable, they actually cause men to appear very narcissistic. And then once these things are treated, guys are not narcissistic anymore, right? Like if you take a guy who's an alcoholic or a cocaine addict, or he's addicted to porn, his whole life centers around his addiction. So you're not going to be his priority at all. He's only going to be thinking about his addiction. So he's going to appear very narcissistic, but yet if he stops acting out in his addiction and gets sober, he's going to care about you and be able to prioritize the relationship, therefore not seeming narcissistic at all. So that's why I think we have to kind of be careful a little bit about how many guys we're just saying are like narcissistic. So narcissistic guys, the way that they show up in the beginning for sure is a lot of love bombing. So narcissists in the beginning need to sort of mirror you a little bit and need to sort of appear like they have it together, even though they know that they haven't. And they know that eventually the facade is going to fall away and you're going to see them for who they really are. So they know they only have a set amount of time to manipulate you and help you fall under their trance, right? So they will love bomb you and make you feel like you're the most important woman in the world. And they will be very good at getting out of you what your dreams are and what you're looking for to have in life. And they will quickly assure you that they can create whatever those dreams are. Narcissists will typically create some sort of drama in the beginning. And the purpose of that is to test you to see if you have boundaries. If you do have boundaries, then they will move on. If you don't have boundaries, they will dig in even further. They will do a little bit of insulting. It's like a very tiny amount, but again, it's just to kind of push up against you and see if you have any kind of boundaries or anything like that. They will, make you the focal point of their life. They'll obsessively call you. They'll obsessively text you. They'll try to move the commitment forward really quickly. So they might propose quickly. They might get married quickly. They will, I could go on, but I think those are like some of the characteristics that we see the most of in the beginning.
And so do you think this is where like having boundaries is the thing that we should be working on? Is it identifying, being able to better identify these types of men? How do we start to protect ourselves from getting involved and falling for unhealthy men?
So I think boundaries are really important for sure. I think that taking care of yourself, I think really staying on top of where you're at, if you're anywhere near the stage of deprivation, I think coming up with a plan of how you're going to meet all of your needs so that you're not so susceptible. I think being honest with yourself about whether you have a tendency to trauma bond and desire intensity. If that's you, I think working on that so that you can heal that and you're not wanting to create that with another man keeping your eyes wide open, and that when a man starts doing this stuff to you, that you really keep yourself aware and accountable, and you choose not to engage with this particular guy, right? Because it's very, very difficult for a narcissist to change. So, you know, I have women email me all the time that are like, yeah, he's a narcissist, but I love him. I've been with him for 9 years. Like, I want to stay. And it's like, it's really hard for them to change. It's really difficult. Also, you know, creating a village of people who can support you in your process on the way to finding love, so that you have lots of emotional support and you feel loved and cared for. And so you're not going to men first. You're going to your village first for love, and you go to men. Because even in partnership, you don't want to go to your man with all your needs and wants. You want to go to everyone and then lean on him sometimes, right? And my experience is women who end up in relationships with narcissists, they so deeply want to be loved, and they need to learn how to spread that around. They need to learn how to build a community of people who are supporting them. And then, you know, for sure, this is way oversaid, but I do think learning how to practice self-care and self-love, you know, so that you can sustain whatever amount of time you need to until you find love, right? And then, of course, take care of yourself once you're in love. Don't give up on yourself because you're in love. So yeah, that's just like a few things that I would recommend.
What do you think are some of the, and you can share with us perhaps a client experience or your own experience, but what do you think are some of the, I guess, the biggest growth opportunities that we can take from having had relationships that have gotten really unhealthy?
So number one is that I want women to recognize and know that you can change, and that you can have a totally different experience around all of this than you think you can. And it's a very powerful and pivotal moment in a woman's life when she realizes she can change all of this. And I think there's a lot of women out there who have forgotten how powerful they are. They really have. They've given their power away for so long that they've forgotten how powerful they are. I think another growth opportunity is learning the beauty and the excitement around creating a life that's really beautiful and full. And it's not a life that's all him. It's very hard, it's very sad, it's very painful when you're totally focused on the guy. And when a woman recognizes that she's powerful and she can create a full life, and then all of a sudden her life is full and the guy's just a part of it, it's a pretty cool experience, right? I know you've experienced it. I mean, it's amazing. Another growth opportunity is for a woman to know that she can actually change her future, right? And attract an incredible guy simply by the work that she's willing to put in every single day is incredible. Because women absolutely can attract the one simply by doing the work, period. The work creates certainty that you can attract the one, not possibility, certainty. And I think that's an incredible growth opportunity for women to have. And then I think learning new healthy ways of relating and getting to heal your childhood wounding and getting to become the person that you wanted to become when you were a kid. I mean, that is the coolest feeling ever. So I think those are like incredible growth opportunities that are like life-changing, right?
I so love that you said that. And what I notice as well is the women that I work with that have done the work actually end up going on to have that kind of relationship that's almost the envy of their friends and colleagues, because they really have up-leveled themselves and all of their relational skills. That the quality of the relationship and the consciousness of that relationship is so much better than what it would have been if you hadn't have had perhaps a bit of a challenging run in the past with trying to find love, right?
Yes, and you do such amazing work with the women you work with. Like, you're such a powerful coach.
Thank you so much, my love.
You're welcome.
What else would you like to talk about on this topic of toxic relationships? What's important for the ladies to know?
Probably the only thing that I would like leave with women, because I feel like I kind of touched on the important pieces, is just to know that your guy is out there and you're absolutely going to meet him. Like, the journey to finding love, it has moments that are so hard and so lonely and so painful, and moments where, you know, you're just like at a place where you think it's not going to happen. And you're like, I've invested this amount of money and I've done this and I've done that. And it just seems like it's not happening. And I don't know what to do. And I really just want women to hear, like, you're absolutely going to have the thing that you want. You're going to get to have the partnership that you want if you show up for yourself, right? And you show up for yourself and you do the work that you need to do for yourself. Like, you are meant to have love in this lifetime. And when you're with toxic men, it's excruciatingly painful. And there is an abundance of healthy, amazing men on this planet that want to give incredible women love. And so it's like, you just can't give up. Like, not an option. Don't give up, right? You're going to get what you want. So yeah, that's what I would leave it at.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, my love. And I know that you're an incredible coach doing incredible work with your clients as well. Tell us, for those women that are watching that are actually sort of considering their next steps as far as working through some of these issues that they're identifying, perhaps as part of this event or before, how would you describe your specialty as far as what you support women with?
I work with a lot of women in their 30s and 40s who want to attract love and want to get married. I do a lot of work with those women. And then I help women who are like, I want to get married, I want to be able to have a family. And I work with women on attracting their partner and having it be successful. So yeah, that's what I do.
And you have a gift for us today as well. Tell us a bit more.
I do. So I have a free e-course. It's a 5-day e-course, and it is on how to begin attracting love into your life. So it's very basic. It's just like a fun little 5-day course that just teaches you like the basics of learning how to attract love into your life, because it's really about attracting love. It's not about attracting like one particular guy. It's about attracting love and trusting that, you know, the perfect guy is going to show up and love's going to come through him, right? So yeah, I'm really excited. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Make sure that you get connected with Darcy. All of her links are below the video, and you can grab yourself a free copy of her beautiful Attracting Love e-course. Thank you so much for joining us again, my love. It's always been a pleasure, and I love the wisdom that you share with our girls each and every year.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here. It was so fun.
And thanks again for joining us for today's Love Transformation class. We'll be back again tomorrow with another really brilliant conversation. I'll see you then.